Welcome to a very interesting new format of Take a Pause we're trying out, where we oftentimes get questions from all of you in comments, in DMs, across the board. Thought, why not do an episode where I answer your questions? But to make it more interesting, I have not seen any of these questions. 20 questions, 21 questions, or how many ever, I don't even know how many questions these are, have been picked by the team. And I'm just going to try and answer them as soon as I see them. So in case you want to run through all the questions, you can. In case you want to skip to a particular question, you can too. If you're on YouTube, you're going to see this in the time code. If you're in audio, that's going to be a little tougher for you to do. But the idea is to make this a fun experience for you and also interesting for me. So I'm not thinking too far about what I'm answering. But before we go into the questions, I want to make sure you hit subscribe, smash that bell icon, going into the questions or other questions. Ritika asks, how to deal with information overload? So I struggle with information overload a lot. It's one of those pieces which I've actually learned about in recent times is the fact that if you actually load your mind with too much information, not just less information, it actually takes your feeling of like self-control, it kind of goes away. So, you don't feel that sense of self-control. You kind of feel like, that you are almost building up a sense of feeling overwhelmed. And that actually makes your mind feel like you're under some form of danger. It pushes you down a slope of feeling like you need to run away from anything which you're doing right now. So the idea is whenever you kind of feel that happening, stop yourself and ask yourself, do I need to consume this information now? And oftentimes you sit with it yourself and ask that question of yourself, you find a way to not go beyond the overload point. That's what I do at least. Javed asks, what do you do during your breaks, vacations to rejuvenate yourself? So when I'm on a break, I try to switch off from any form of social media as much as possible. Try to go to a place where I'm closer to nature. Also people who I'm really close to, my inner circle of people. And as much as you might feel a break is about you kind of going there and and trying out too many things and having too many experiences, when you come back from those breaks and vacations, you feel like you need a vacation to move beyond that vacation. And so what I always try to do is make sure that my breaks aren't hectic. Try to go to one place, roam around, have some experiences, get to relax. But again, don't overwhelm yourself with things. You can take a few things and enjoy them really well. Be present in them. Instead of thinking about, okay, I need to get 20 things done today, which means I will not sleep. That's not going to be enjoyable for you. And you'll need a vacation after your vacation. Anshula Gupta asks, how do I handle overthinking? So I'm a serial overthinker. I did an episode a while back with Meredith Arthur, who talks about overthinking in this book called Get Out of My Head. And she actually spoke about overthinking as actually a superpower, right? You can actually use that in the best possible way. There are ways for you to channel it, because when you overthink things, you're also really running through all the scenarios that might happen. The problem is we tend to do it infinitely. We tend to not stop ourselves from overthinking. So if you actually sit down and say, I will overthink this right now, but I'm stopping that in half an hour. It's the same goes with procrastination as well as overthinking, right? You got to move to a decision. You also got to move towards the simple fact that you can only control a few things. And most things we overthink about are out of our control. So why are you focusing on things that are out of your control? Just focus on the stuff that's in your control. And that generally, coming from an overthinker, has helped me be a less hectic overthinker, or rather a less stressful overthinker. I want to see how many of these papers actually fall on the desk. If you're watching this video, you got to count how many of these, when I flip them away, actually land up on the desk, and drop that in the comments. Okay. Parth Trivedi 22 asks, how to stay focused all the time? So you can't stay focused all the time. I don't think it's possible for our minds to stay focused all the time. There's a certain period of time that the human mind can actually stay focused. And that varies from person to person, just depends on how much you practice. So don't put the pressure on yourself to be focused all the time. If you decided to stay focused for an hour, make sure you move away all the stuff that are distractions you can go to, are things that you can kind of say, okay, this is too tough, I want to move to that right now. Take all those things away. Start slow, 15 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, And generally 1 2 hours or maybe 3 hours of focus time is what you'll end up getting as an individual. So don't put that overt pressure of saying, okay, I'm not focusing, I'm not focusing, I'm not focusing. Then what ends up happening is that you're not focusing. So you'd rather give yourself a shorter period of time to focus, take a break, come back, and focus again. Shush art to heart asks, I'm worried about trying something new. What if I fail? I have very low self esteem. How do I overcome this? So, we all worry about trying something new because we fear judgment. We worried about the fact that we will fail at it because it's new. We worry about the simple fact that how will people judge us because of how we're performing in it. But if you kind of go back to the time when you were a kid, everything was new, right? When a kid falls off, no one's going to laugh at them. When a kid tries something, like kind of rolls around somewhere and falls down, you're not turning to them and saying, "Oh, you didn't do this," right? Not judging them. As we get older, our fear of judgment rises. So think about the simple fact that you'll only be able to get better if you try something. You'll only be able to realize if you actually enjoy something, or if figuring out is something that you really want to do if you give it a shot. So take small steps, realize that you're just a kid trying something out. What's the worst that will happen? You will fall on your bum. And just look at it that way and take a small step and try it out. That's what I do most times. And also, I can't tell myself that worst case I'll just look stupid, which is fine, because I don't necessarily want to care about what someone's judgment of me is. I care more about my own judgment of myself and have I really experienced something new, and that kind of takes away that pressure over time. Kanchan Budlani asks, what to do if you're unsuccessful all the time, even after giving you 100%? So, everyone talks to you about failure, right? And they tell you that, failing is important, and that you learn from your failures and you move ahead. Oftentimes, it's also important to know when you fail at something so often that maybe it's not something you should really focus on, and you got to realize that, is this something you should really be doing? Is there something else which you should focus on? To take that call is actually one of the toughest calls to take, for you to turn around and say that this is not the path I should be on because I'm continuously not being able to do it. Is there something else for me to do? So you got to think about that as well, and which is something which we don't talk about enough. Is that failure doesn't mean you continue on the same path by learning from it. Failure is actually you realizing that, do I alter my path to move towards something that's better? That's how I always looked at it, is that whenever I'm really bad at something, I don't focus on the weak points, I focus on the strong points and try to change and rather navigate myself towards the stronger points. And that's brought a lot more confidence and a lot more, I would say it's moved me forward a lot more than leaving me stuck. So give that a shot if that's an option for you. Otherwise, you just got to take it a step at a time, a day at a time. And eventually, I am a believer that things do work out, but I would still say that calibrate if you can alter your path. Wow, that one really tried to fall off. Priyanka B2188 asks, how do you deal with a toxic boss? Have I had a toxic boss? Have I had a toxic boss? I've had some semi-toxic bosses in the past. I've been in a leadership position for a long time. I feel the only way to deal with someone who's toxic is to set your boundaries and to tell them this is how you want to function. And over time, you will realize that either they will realize that what they're doing is toxic and what they're doing is affecting you that way, or you will realize that that's not really the space for you to be in or the organization for you to be in. You got to chart that out for yourself. And the more boundaries you set and the more open you are about those boundaries for yourself, it's as simple as saying, I don't want to respond to work calls or emails post a certain hour. And that's your right to say that. And occasionally you can kind of come in and do that if your work really requires you to do it. But once you make it a habit for someone, they kind of think that your boundary allows them to kind of come in your non-work hours and ask you to do that. So set your boundaries and be open about it. And if it's the right kind of person you're working with, they will learn from it and evolve. If they don't, you kind of have your answer as well. Ananta Sai Monica asks, how to build trust and respect in relationships. So trust and respect kind of build over time. It's not something you build instantly in a relationship. You do it by being open to understanding the other person's perspective. You build it by showcasing what you're feeling as well, not assuming people understand what's going on in your own head. But you also do this by treating every day as a scenario where you are no longer now a singular entity and that you're working as a partnership. And in any partnership, there is give and take, but there's also allowing each of you to have your own space. And it takes time to build that in. It takes time to figure out how those things work. And oftentimes those things go away, but you build trust, you build respect by really being there when things matter, by really kind of understanding the other person's emotions, but also not relying on the other person for everything, right? You are responsible for your own happiness as well. You're responsible for your own individuality. So it doesn't mean giving it all away. That doesn't get you respect. That doesn't get you, that level of trust. But to find that balance, and that only comes with time. Again, one of my favorite things to say is take it a day at a time, because you got to kind of build that trust almost like blocks from time to time. And whenever that trust goes off, because things do go wrong, you have to then work to rebuild that, because it takes a lot more time to build it and far lesser time for things to kind of break down. So keep that in mind and use these elements to kind of build trust and respect. What to do when you've been on survival mode for too long and forget how it feels to be normal? It's from Vintage Aquarius. It's a tough one, right? If you've been in survival mode for a long time, it's tough to kind of get back to normal. And I feel things like therapy really help in this case. It's not something you can just kind of redo by yourself. Therapy has been one of the most important things that I've added to my life. It's helped me reflect on how I function. It's helped me understand what pieces are helpful to me, not helpful to me. But more than anything else, I feel for you to come back to some form of normalcy, to move away from survival, you have to figure out that we often believe we're always on what I like to call general mode, right? We're always in a war front. We're always in like really fighting to survive. And at some point, you realize that life actually is normal, but you're still treating it like it's a battle. And you got to think about the fact that, are you still in a battle, or are you imagining that you're still in one? And if you aren't, then you can kind of almost like reflecting and realizing that helps. But I would really say that, if I'm looking at this question and saying that this requires you to speak to someone who is a specialist, and even a few sessions actually give you a lot of clarity about how your mind's working and how you can kind of move away from this frame of mind. The fact that you ask this question means that you're on the right path, is how I'd like to put it. Ajesh Guleria asks, tell us about your favorite book. Oh, it's a tough one. I have many, many favorite books. It's about right now, it's a book. The book I'm reading is becoming one of my favorite books. It's called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin is arguably one of the world's greatest music producers. He's written a book about the creative process. It is beautiful. I think so many. Like, I'm 3/4 through, and I want to read it twice more at least. But if I kind of go back over the last year or two, 4,000 Weeks is one of my favorite books. If I go lifetime, and it's tough to pick a book from a lifetime, but if I had to pick one book to give someone, I would give Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday. It's fundamentally changed how I think. It taught me how taking a pause really helps. So yeah, Stillness is the Key, recent times 4,000 Weeks, and right now it's The Creative Act. Vasundhara asks, how to deal with friendship breakups? So friendships are tricky things, right? Friendships are relationships, or rather are family we choose to have. So apart from the family we're born with, I feel the closest people we build over time are friends. But as we all grow and evolve, the tendencies of friends to also kind of drift apart. For you to no longer be in a spot where you are connected to each other as friends. And I think it happens in two ways. One way is that I feel naturally you drift apart, and that's fine. You pick up where you left off whenever you catch up, or you kind of actually break that relationship apart. And when that kind of happens, it's important for you, and you shouldn't have expectations of the other person. You should say that for you, it's important to be clear about why you believe, you either want to hit stop on this friendship, or you want to say, okay, I want to reduce the amount of time we spend together, or anything of that sort, it's important for you to be clear about why. And in the most clear, and I would say in the most friendly manner, most humane manner and direct manner, tell the other person, because that's the best thing you can do for them. Is that you don't hold on to a friendship because you've been friends for so long. You hold on to a friendship because it's giving you both an immense amount of joy and love and satisfaction right now, and it's going to continue to give that to you in the future. If it's not going to, you're doing both of you a disservice by sticking to it. So have a clear conversation, and sometimes you actually realize that maybe you do want to stay friends, and what is leading you to break up is actually something that's only in your head or only in the other person's head. And even if you are breaking up at that point, if they truly were a good friend, they'll understand, and you never know, might just pick up at some point of time later in life, or never pick it up, but at least you've ended it in the right possible note, with, I would say, the right amount of closure. I've had a few of those. SP Kumar Murli asks, how to stop living in our minds? It's a tough one, right? We live a lot in our minds. We talk to ourselves in many different tones through our own, the way our mind talks to us. But I feel that how to stop living in our minds is to actually take what's in your mind and putting down on paper. I feel writing something down on paper, not typing it out, taking a pen or a pencil, taking a book, and writing out your thoughts is one of the best ways to not overload your mind and not stop, and to kind of stop living in it. There is something, and it's been clinically proven from everything which I've read, is that when you put something down on paper, it's like you having a conversation with yourself, and you're also like taking and rather downloading all the stuff off your head onto paper. So you feel less heavy, and you tend to not feel as stuck in your head as you would otherwise. So how do you stop living in your mind is by taking all the stuff you don't want to keep in your head, putting it on paper, and have that conversation. Just reduce the noise, reduce the chatter, as it's called, in your head, because everything your mind's telling you isn't necessarily true. Your mind's often telling you things that push you down the wrong direction, push the wrong kind of emotions in your head. So I would say put it on paper. Hope this helps. Path But Lost asks, do you think manifestation works? Okay. I was never a believer in manifestation. I still don't know if I entirely am. I live with someone who totally believes. I'm married to someone who totally believes in manifestation. I'm a I'm a 60-40 pro it now. I was a 40-60 before, because I believe manifestation does one thing. Putting something out into the universe is almost you pushing all your energies, your mindset, everything else in a certain direction. It's the best way to push yourself forward down a certain path by manifesting it. So whether it comes true or not, it's a forward moving activity. It's kind of pushing you ahead, it's pushing you forward. So I believe manifestation works in that sense. Will it come true in the exact same way you manifest? Maybe not. But is it pushing you in the right direction? Yes, it will. So in that context, I believe manifestation works. But I've been surprised many times with putting stuff out there and seeing how it actually comes back to you, which has kind of moved me towards a little bit more of a believer in this case. At some point, I would figure out how many of these papers are actually on the desk. I hope you're counting. Frame zoned. Frame zoned asks, why is being nice considered a weakness and not a strength? One of my favorite quotes, I don't think it's a quote, it's like a sticker, which used to be in my mom's cupboard when I was growing up, is good things happen to nice people. I've always followed that in life. I truly believe in it. But I learned a while back, and there's an episode I did with Prakhar on Take a Pause, where he spoke about the difference between being nice and having grace. And being graceful is you really, behaving the right with people, really acting in the right way with people without having them believe they can, push you aside or use you in the wrong form. And he had this perspective that niceness is often a weakness, but being graceful is a strength. I kind of believe those lines are blurred, at least in my head. I still haven't really figured out the difference between grace and being nice. But what I would say is that whenever you feel like you being nice is being taken advantage of, it's you being gullible rather than nice. It's you evading taking hard calls because you believe people are not going to like you. So think about that line between nice and gullible. And whenever you feel it's going in that direction, when you're getting taken advantage of, or it's becoming a true weakness for you, push yourself a little bit further down the nice slope rather than the gullible slope. And maybe it actually becomes the strongest part of you. I truly believe in that. I truly believe that being nice to people gives you a lot of strength. And if we are all nice to each other, I think we far happier world and far nicer world to deal with. That fell down. Peter asks, what is Plot Device? So Plot Device is a company I set up a few years ago. It was primarily to, be a space for all the content I was creating. It's evolving into a space to truly share um, almost things people can learn from and use in their own lives. Add to their own toolkit, add their own manuals in life, so they can use it. So it's a creative studio where you're building content to help you learn and for you to use things in your own life. That's what Plot Device is. Because a plot device is a device that helps move a story along. And that way, what you want to do is help you move your story along in life by giving you things you can use to push you ahead. This paper fell right here. Captain Varun asks, how do you know you've found your partner in life? So I'll give you context. Before I met my wife Pooja, the longest relationship I'd had was 6 months. I'd had many relationships. Nothing crossed that period of time. Now been married to her for 10 years. We got married 4 months after we met. 3 to 4 months after we met. Sometimes the time needs to be right for you and for the other person. Both of you need to be aligned towards where you want your life to go together. There needs to be love, but some of these other elements really, are important. And you kind of then take the call basis out of those. Does it feel right? Does it feel like you both want to go on this journey together? And that's how I took that call. And I know that's how Pooja took the call. And we kind of both sensed it. I feel you generally do sense it if you believe you're aligned in that sense. But is there a magic formula for that? There isn't. If there was, then that would be the app everybody would want to use. I don't have the answer, but this is how I figured it out. Also, you got to genuinely want this person to be your companion for life, be your partner for life in everything you do. And if you kind of believe that and you both work towards evolving in that direction, because a partnership or a marriage is as much about how you work on it as it is about you just getting married. And so you got to both commit to working on it in the long term. And that's how you know you found the right person. And these papers are not flying anywhere. How many questions are these? Silent Soul with Gratitude asks, should I heal first or grab a chance to do something? There is this concept of moving forward rather than moving ahead. And it comes from the fact that when you have been through some form of feeling hurt, having some sense of having some trauma in your life, how people say that just move ahead, move on from this. But I heard this a while back, and I'm forgetting where I heard it. I think it was a TED talk which I saw, which talks about the concept of moving forward, because you never truly leave experiences you've had in your life behind. You carry them with you. What you have to work towards is, are you carrying them with you in a way that is helping you move forward, or are you carrying them with you in a way that's it's like pulling you down and really putting you in that hole? And you got to figure at which point you transition from one to the other. And that's the point you grab a chance to do something. And that's something which only you can realize. Again, I'm going to continually say this in many of these questions. Therapy really helps. Working with someone really helps. For you to realize the point when this is no longer baggage for you to carry or to pull you down, but this is almost something you've been through that you are using in a way to push yourself or rather move forward into what could be a great path for you in your life. And that transitionary period is the toughest one. Figuring it out is tough, but think about it in that sense and see if that gives you some form of clarity. I got a few more here. Anushka Somani asks, is building your career greater than holding on to a relationship? It's an individual choice. Most people say that you shouldn't put your career before your relationships, or you should put and back and forth. But relationships are core to happiness, and what we all want to work towards in our life is to be happy. And it's been scientifically proven. This is Harvard study on happiness, which has been done, I think, over the last, like, I don't know how long, like 50, 60, if not longer, years, where they've actually deduced that the core of human happiness comes from the connections we have with other people. So you got to have relationships that you hold as you move ahead in life, but that doesn't mean that you don't build your career. So take a call basis that you're not giving up all your relationships for your career, because once you have all that success, you have no one to share it with. And even if you do find someone to share it with, that point, the chances of that being as deep might not be there. And that's it, at least what my perspective is. It can be different for many people. So should you build your career and kind of push away from all the relationships you have? Maybe not. Don't let go of all relationships, but you can prioritize different things to a larger extent in different times in your life. But you get a lot of value from relationships, and no amount of growth career-wise, at least that's what I believe, gives you that form of happiness and joy. I'm terrible at throwing these papers. Okay. Divesh asks, how to deal with friendships who don't treat you as well or recognize your worth? I think one of the core fundamentals of friendships is to be very clear and honest with each other. If you kind of feel like a friendship you're a part of is one where you're not being treated well or being recognized the way you want to be, you got to be straight about it. You got to be honest about it and speak your mind. There's a difference between speaking your mind and pointing a finger at someone else. What tends to happen is when you speak your mind, you tend to point a finger and saying, this is how you're behaving. Versus if you say, this is how I am feeling, then the other person will actually lean in and listen to you. Because when you point a finger at someone, they're going to go back and try to go into defense mode. So if you're feeling this in a friendship you have, lean in, talk to them about how you're feeling in the friendship. And if they're truly a friend, they'll react in the right way. If they don't, maybe that wasn't as strong a friendship in the first place. Okay, I got a few left. Akash513 asks, why did you choose to be a content creator besides sharing your learnings? I've always believed that creating content was something which I always wanted to do. I was that kid who would sit alone in a room with toys and make up stories. Anything and everything which I heard, I would go around the house, around the locality, and tell people about it. When I got onto a train with my parents, I would actually go and tell somebody in the adjoining compartment about everything that happened in our house that day. My parents weren't very excited about that last one. So I was always that person. But because I worked in television for a fair amount of time, because in my earlier entrepreneur stint at Glitch, I worked on the production side. I was always a part of it, but I was never really hands-on, getting my hands dirty, as you say. And so when I got the opportunity after almost like 36 years of my life, I started to really understand the value of doing stuff by yourself. And I get an immense amount of satisfaction with just sharing things and creating content. And I just do it for satisfaction more than anything else. I think everything else is secondary, everything else is a bonus. And yeah, that's why I chose to be a content creator. All the other stuff came later. Okay, last one. This is Ninja asks, how to learn to give space to your partner. You learn to give space to your partner by actually turning around and understanding what their definition of space is. Because everybody requires different amounts of space. And some people require less space, some require more. It's about you having that conversation and really understanding how much they need and making sure you give that to them. And whenever you feel like you're going too far into that, also ask. I think we don't ask enough, saying, am I getting too much in your face? Is this invading into your space? These are simple statements and questions to ask, and we don't ask them enough. And so actually ask those questions and make sure that you build a relationship where you both can be honest about your own space. You can be honest about when you don't stick to what you decided as a couple, and work at it. And that for me is the best way to understand the space you should give your partner. That's it. These are the questions we answered this time. We're going to do this hopefully, or rather surely, once a month. So if you have more questions, make sure you drop it in the comments, and we'll try to add them to the next batch of questions we're going to answer. We're going to try and make this a fun thing. We might even at some point consider doing a live streamed one, which I'm not promising because I cannot do late nights. But it's something we might do at some point of time. So drop your questions down there. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. The podcast episodes are going to come up soon, and lots more newer formats as well. So hit subscribe, smash the bell icon. I'll see you guys in the next one. And if you're still here, and if you've counted how many papers are still left on this desk, then drop in the number. We might just give you something. Not sure yet. We might just give you something. Drop it in the comments.